Welcome to the Sound on Sound electronic music podcast channel. My name is William J. Stokes, and this is My Life in Modules, a podcast about modular synthesis, where each episode I invite a guest to select the synth modules that have meant the most to them and talk about why, before treating us to an exclusive performance using only that modest selection. Today, I'm very excited to be joined by someone I've been looking for an opportunity to interview for some time now. Los Angeles-based composer, producer, and sound designer Jonathan Snipes. Alongside his work as an academic at UCLA and numerous soundtracking credits ranging from the Netflix show House of Ninjas to the DC Comics audio series Batman Unburied, Jonathan is also a member of the incredible Clipping, alongside rapper David Diggs and fellow producer William Hutson, a band who I do consider really to be in the vanguard of what we might call experimental hip-hop, although I'm interested to explore that heading a little bit. Blending rap, sound design, beat making, avant-garde composition with some pretty ambitious conceptual composition and somehow making all of that sound quite good. Welcome, Jonathan.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's funny, isn't it? I mean, Google Clipping and you're likely to see something come up about, experimental rap group or like avant-garde hip-hop group or something like that. But I feel like that comes simply from the fact that the band has David Diggs in it, a virtuosic rapper, incredible rapper.
Yeah.
But listening to your records, it feels just as much like it's led by sound design and this avant-garde collage sonic world that you're taking as much from Stockhausen as you are from the hip-hop school of beat making.
Well, we are. And I think we've said this a lot, right? But it felt like the only sort of, I don't know, I have issues with the word authenticity, right? But it felt like one of the only authentic ways that the three of us could make rap songs. We weren't going to pretend to be people we weren't. And so pulling a bit, Bill and I who make the beats, like pulling from our influences and our taste and our aesthetic felt, at first it felt highly conceptual and almost like a mashup, right? To sort of make like the container was rap song, and then we could fill it with our own taste in sounds, which mostly was coming from sort of electronic music and sound design and experimental music. And I'm not sure how many of the like actual sounds we were making were experimental for us, right? Like we know that the sounds are going to work, and they're largely fairly referential to other sort of existing music that you would find in the experimental section of a record store, right?
Yeah. You're talking about people like Annea, Lockwood.
Yeah, and so much of our beat making is like, it's this kind of a rap song with this kind of a like an experimental sound sort of applied and organized that way. The experiment for us and the reason that I think Clipping at least used to be experimental music was that we didn't know if that was be listenable at all, right? And the first, the
experiment was, will it sound?
Yeah, well, does it work? Is it a good idea, right? Which is, I think, the crux of like anything that, experimental has gone the way of like alternative in terms of like a genre name, right? Whereas like it used to mean like or punk, right? It used to mean like an ethos or an approach to music, and now it means a sonic aesthetic, right? Now it's like a style. And I don't think that's a bad thing. And I definitely think that we are experimental in our sound and our style in the current meaning, sort of genre, like record store meaning of it. But when we first started, it was, I think, experimental in the classic sense. In the first 5 or 6 Clipping songs that we made, we were like, I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's good or not, and I don't know if it works. What we know is that it fulfills the brief that we set out, right? We wrote a series of hypotheses, and then we did these things sort of classically, experimentally, right? And we would get to the end of making these songs and we were like, well, we did all the things on our list. And it's the only music I've ever made. And we the three of us talk about this all the time, that when we started and we made a few songs, we play it for our friends, and our friends generally didn't like it. Like usually you make music and you play it for your friends and they say really nice things because they're your friends. And this one was greeted with a lot of like sort of quizzical, like, well, I don't know, I wonder who that's for. That's interesting. Kind of
That's really
responses.
hard to take, actually.
It was a really interesting response, and certainly it started as like a side project because I was scoring movies, a little bit. No, when we first started, I didn't really. I mean, I sort of was at the very beginning of a film score career. The three of us all had other things going on, and clipping was the thing that the three of us did together that felt like a weird side project that could be really specific, right? Because it didn't have to be like this sort of reflection of whatever was inside of us, right? We could just we could try this weird experiment and see how it went. And I remember sort of agreeing with the friends that I would play this stuff for, who would be kind of quizzical and like not really sure what it's for. I was like, yeah, I don't actually know if it's working either, but this was the idea, and we did the idea. And rather than try to mold it into something that aesthetically lines up with our taste, we like really sort of operating blind in the beginning there. It was a weird experience that I've actually never had making music before or since. And I think the two friends that loved it were Stephen Cano, who performs as Tick Tick, who's a brilliant noise artist, and Brian Miller, who runs Death Bomb Arc Records, were like huge fans of this project right from the beginning. They were like, no, you've got something here. This is amazing. Keep doing this. Keep pushing. And I'm not sure that we would have kept going without their encouragement. Maybe. Clipping certainly wouldn't be, no one would know about it if it weren't for Brian Miller. Bill and I started it as a remix project where we were taking existing acapellas and making sort of new noise adjacent beats to them, of like underneath them. We played a couple shows this way. David, who's an old friend of Bill's, moved to LA, and he was listening to that stuff. We were all just hanging out, and he said, what if one of these was an original? So let's make an original song. And so he wrote, I can't remember if it was beat first. I think it was. I think we made a beat to nothing, and then he wrote a song. That song is Loud, that's on the Mid-City record. And then we did one show where Bill and I played our remixes, sort of like a classic noise show style. And then David got up and got on the mic and did that song as our last song. And we were like, oh, that's the band. We shouldn't do remixes anymore. We should do more of those. That was like, people didn't know how to respond, and it was cool, and it felt new, and it felt like something. So then we made like 4 or 5 more songs to flesh out into like having enough to play a show. And that's the sort of period that I'm talking about, where we're like, well, we kind of knew that Loud was good and that Loud worked. And then we were like, well, how do we not just make that exact same song over and over again? And so I don't remember the exact order, but it was like Guns Up, Mob to It, Bullshit, some of the songs from Mid-City. Mid-City, if you like rearrange it in chronological order, you sort of hear us learn how to make that music.
That's a really nice kind of chronology.
Yeah, and then we had enough to play a show, so we played a couple of shows with those like 6 songs or whatever, and then we're like, well, we should make a whole album. So we finished an album's worth of stuff, which was Mid-City, and just dumped it on a Bandcamp page that we made. And Brian was like, I'm going to do PR for this for free and send it to everybody because I think it's good and I think people should hear it. And that's how Anthony Fantano heard it, who gave it a pretty glowing review, and that kind of blew things up. And then that's how...
this is Anthony Fantano on The Needle Drop, of
course.
That
guy.
The YouTube channel.
Who's been a really strong supporter of the band. I was quite into his review of the new one, which he didn't like as much as the others, but I thought he had a lot of really like interesting things to say about it. And I do love it when people give sort of critical reviews and actually engage with the music, which is what I think he did. Anyway, not to get too
Yeah,
sidetracked.
totally. I mean, I could talk about that for ages. Like the negative review is in some ways like a lost art of being able to like comment on something that like there are ways of commenting on something. Maybe you didn't like it as much as something else, but you do that with respect, and you know, and I don't know. It feels like nowadays, if something's not absolutely glowing, it has to be a hatchet job and saying these people are terrible at what they do. You know, it doesn't. It can be a respectful sort of engagement, like you say, with the art. You know, that's just as important in some ways.
I mean, not to get too much on a tangent here, but like, but the Fantano, the negative reviews of clipping have by and large over the years generally been about us as people, not about the music. And I don't mean
interesting.
I don't mean like us as like it's like these guys are jerks, right? But
that's just the friends.
But usually the crux of a negative review is like, okay, this guy teaches at UCLA, this guy Bill has a PhD, and David is like an actor. How can this possibly be real rap music? This is not authentic rap music, so we can't even engage with the content because it feels like a joke or a put on or a parody. Right from the get-go, because these people aren't like, you know, from the hood.
How interesting is that? Yeah.
Which is like, which to me just begs the question of like, well, why do you listen to rap music then, reviewer? Right? Like, what do you need out of rap music? Do you need to feel like this music is made by people who are like ignorant people who don't know what they're doing, and you need to define it and you need to like quantify it for people? And that's not cool. And that's how a lot of like rap music writing feels to me. I mean, I was actually like, when Fantano had a fairly, I mean, not negative really, like a sort of lukewarm review of the new album, I was really pleased because he knows us. We've hung out a lot over the years actually. And he really engaged with the music itself in a way that I think was fair. I like the music that we made on that album, but the music that we made on this album is the first time that it's not been his taste also. And that's a totally fair way to review a record. So I don't know. I was pleased with it.
I mean, it does have one of my favorite lyrics of David's, which is back when everything was really good except the dragons.
Yeah. I like that.
which is I think a very profound lyric. But it is just, that is definitely something that was kind of on my notes here to sort of to touch on, which I think is really interesting, is that it feels, there's that word adjacent, and it resists categorization in some ways. And it's certainly, I always think of hip hop in a similar vein as a genre, kind of its cultural patterns, almost traditionally, almost like punk, like where it accompanied such a cultural movement that the music and the cultural context are like almost inextricable. And so there's a lot of old school hip hop that's sampling like, legends of black music like James Brown or something like that. That's not just about the sonics of the sample. That's about also like a homage to the history of black music, and and it's all these things that we know about hip hop.
Sure, yeah.
But you guys are sort of attacking this genre aesthetic from the side.
We really relied. I've talked at length at this. We've talked a lot about this in interviews. We really relied on rules in the beginning, right? We had all these like very specific constraints in our beat making. They were like, we don't use drum sounds. We don't use conventional pitch or melody. But nothing can feel like loose or improvised. Everything has to feel like it's organized on a grid and it's in relation to the voice. It's not just chaos and rapping at the same time. The two have to be in conversation with each other the whole time. And we've quickly abandoned a lot of those rules. But I think making those first handful of songs, we learned to embody the spirit of those rules without necessarily sticking to them to the letter the whole time. And we broke them all pretty quickly. I mean, like Bullshit and Guns Up were like our second and third songs in some order. I don't remember what order, but those both have sung hooks with melodies, you know, because that's my like taste in experimental music is like a piece of process music that you can play for anybody, regardless of their taste, and they with almost no context, and they can hear it and they know what's going on. Something like Alvin Lucier's "I'm Sitting in a Room," or Steve Reich's phase pieces, or something like. Basically anybody can like be awed by piano phase because you know exactly what's happening from get in it, and it's so impressive and it's so interesting, and it's also musical and beautiful, and it forces you to listen to it in a different way. And that's sort of always the goal, and that's a weird little unicorn to strive for. And like I think most of the time we don't do that, but occasionally like a piece like, I mean, the pieces the clipping songs I think are really successful in doing that. I think are Get Up, the one that's all an alarm clock, and Run for Your Life, the one with Le Chat where David is rapping over the beats from passing cars.
That's actually, I was going to ask you about that. I've got that in my notes too, because that was the first clipping song I heard. And I remember thinking, are they playing the beats out of a car?
Yeah, that was that's the hardest thing we've ever done. I can't even tell you how much work that was to get it to sound like nothing. Yeah.
I mean, it did. It's definitely. I really want to try. It's inspired me to try hopefully with your blessing. I want to blast something out of a car and just drive around a car park for a while and just put a binaural head in the middle and see what comes.
Yeah,
out.
Try it. It's
good luck.
It's you will learn a lot. That's an experimental track. For sure.
I mentioned Annea Lockwood earlier.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking the second record of clipping, Visions of Bodies Being Burned, ends with Annea Lockwood's burning piano? Is this right?
I think it's the other one. I think it's There Exists an Addiction to Blood ends with the piano.
Oh, is that right? So my mistake.
I will say we made those two records as one album. So we made all of that stuff at the same time, realized we had too much for one album, and so we made, rather than like cutting things, we made even more and then made two albums. And so I forget what songs are on which record all the time. But I believe that's on the first one. Yeah, and that was Bill's idea to do the piano burning. We have this convention of ending records with a performance of a sort of piece from the canon of experimental music on Dead Channel Sky. It's the first time we've interwoven that performance throughout the record of this Mark Trail piece. But we on CLPPNG we had Tom Erb realize a version of Williams mix by John Cage.
Tom Erb, this is of course you've worked with Make Noise a lot.
Yeah. We had this idea of doing Williams mix. You asked about piano burning, but really quickly, we had this idea of doing Williams mix, and I had remembered there was an album. God, now I'm not going to remember the name, but there was an album that I remember from the 90s of somebody doing computer-assisted versions of Williams mix who had written a piece of software to just plug sounds into it, and it would generate a bunch of different versions of Williams mix using, those sounds, so you saved you months of splicing tiny little bits of tape up. And I did some research, and I discovered in my looking around that Tom Erb had made a PD patch that would do Williams mix based on folders of input. And so I just wrote to him, and he was like, I've heard him say in interviews later that I wrote to him, and he wrote back expecting to never hear from me again, saying, well, okay, but I need like 600 sounds organized in this way, in this many folders. And that he was really shocked when 2 weeks later I sent him those folders with those sounds.
Damn it, I didn't really think you'd say yes.
Yeah. And then he made, a dozen versions of Williams mix or whatever, and we picked the best few. And so piano burning was Bill's idea because it felt like the ending of a horror movie, right? Like a fire. And it just felt like a fun thing to do. And that was a crazy day. I made a mic plan. We had like 25 mics on that thing or something like that.
Wow.
Some really close, some inside. Like there were some sacrificial mics that we knew we were never going to get back that didn't sound that interesting, but now we know.
Yeah, in my head, that is an amazing sound.
Yeah.
The sound of
No,
a
it's-
microphone burning as you, and presumably you just pulled what, like a stump of an XLR out
Yeah,
from the middle
it's
of
it's one like click, one DC pop click, and then nothing,
it's gone.
and then it's gone. Yeah. So
Mwah.
not worth it. Not worth it to put your microphones directly in the fire. Annea was lovely about it. Really delightful to work with. Incredibly giving and really complimentary of it. She said that it's really the first time she's really heard the strings snap in a way that she sort of envisioned would be a really amazing sound. And I think it's because we had those mics so close.
Okay, look, we should get into some of your modules.
Oh yeah.
What are we doing here again? Honestly, I feel like we could talk for hours, but we should focus at some point. This is dear listener, you've been very patient. This is I probably should have said this earlier, but maybe the twist. We leave the twist until now, which is we're normally this podcast is kind of skews towards Eurorack, but Jonathan he very politely asked, "Is it okay? Can I go 5U for this?" And I agreed. I gave it my blessing. So let's just touch on for a second, because I know that you do have a sizable Eurorack system. However, you've gone with 5U, which, to be honest, 5U, like, it feels kind of old school considering the kind of music that you make. Why is it that you've gone for that mainly?
Well, I got into modular in like 2005, I think, 2006 maybe, so 20 years ago. Jesus Christ. And at the time, there weren't that many options. There was like Doepfer, Analog Systems, and Analog Solutions. And then maybe like a year after I got into it, like Plan B and Livewire showed up, I think, in the Euro sphere. And then there was Frac Rack at the time. There was Wired and Blasset were both going, and like Metal Box, I want to say, doing like, which was all like, I think like Catgirl synth, like LB and LB designs, like in Frac Rack form. And then in 5U, there was synthesizers.com out of Texas.
Greatest name for a developer of all time.
Synthesizers.com.
Yeah.
Can't believe they got it, right? Even then, right? Like that seems like a wild domain to have been able to get. It's incredible.
No wonder they just put it right there on the chassis of the thing.
And I had never seen or touched a modular synthesizer in person, right? This is all like me reading on the internet. And it just seemed like the Eurorack stuff. Well, like, look, I have a lot of Doepfer modules now, and I've had a lot of Analog Systems and Solution stuff over the years. At the time, not the most aesthetically pleasing looking stuff. Super small knobs, super close together. And at the time, the only real case options were the Doepfer cases, and they were wildly expensive. The cases and power supplies were like a really expensive point of entry, even though the modules were cheaper than the 5U stuff. And I liked the look because I was thinking of, Wendy Carlos and Moog Modular was my idea of what a modular looked like, and the synthesizers.com stuff looked like that. And they had this subscription plan to get into it where you fed them. At the time, it was like $100 a month. And after the first like 2 or 3 months of that, you got some modules, and then you got like a power supply, and then you got a case, and then you got an oscillator, and then you got a filter. And so you'd get a sort of module at a time. And the idea is after a year and a half or whatever it was, you filled your case, and you could always pay ahead and get more or whatever. And that was like, it was actually like, I did the math at the time, and it was actually the cheapest way to get into it.
Let's go through, let's work through,
Yeah.
this great selection of modules, starting with the synthesizers.com Q106 oscillator.
Man, it is a normal ass oscillator. It does very few things, and it just sounds great. It has an octave switch, which I love. I love being able to tune it to a note and then just switching the octave. All mine have there's an additional circuit board that I think is maybe built into them now that you can buy from synthesizer.com to fine tune the octave switch because it wasn't perfectly in octaves from the factory. That was one of the first soldering jobs I did. I remember, I don't think I had my own soldering iron. I was a UCLA student and I had those boards and I used their like soldering lab with some guidance to add these things. And I think honestly, I probably should pull them all out of the cabinet and look at those solder joints because it's been 20 years and they're a little crackly. And I think I've just got some cold solder joints on that. Probably worth a recalibration. In general, my 5U, lot of weird little eccentricities in it. It's now old enough that it's like become one of those instruments that like never quite sounds the same twice, and it's like developed all these quirks.
Well, there's something about that. Like, I don't know. You're right. I mean, this module is the Q106 is kind of as standard an oscillator as you're likely to find, but it's everything you're talking about that I feel like surrounds a module like this that can really give it such character and mean that it's like kind of like the mini Moog, right? Like, I feel like no two mini Moogs are kind of the same.
Yeah. I mean, there's not too much to say about it because it is such a standard oscillator, but it was my first oscillator, my first module. And I will say I get a little annoyed with oscillators that don't have octave switches on them.
I hear you. I agree.
My system, all of my oscillators are my system is like half .com format, half MOTM format, and I don't have any oscillators in the MOTM format. Honestly, because they didn't have octave switches. I'm sure they sound great. I'm sure they're amazing.
But you did get the MOTM filter.
Yeah, the filters. So that's one of the smartest purchases I've ever made. I made a decision pretty like a few years into doing film scores, and when I started doing film scores, I was doing these like really like pretty lousy like made for TV movies that were real like run and gun, like nobody really cared what the music sounded like as long as it sounded like real music, and they were made really fast, but they had, for me in my 20s, pretty decent budgets, and like instead of buying a house, I bought a synthesizer. But I made this. I was like, oh, all these sounds need to be stereo. I was double tracking everything and panning them, and I was like, this is annoying. I should just get 2 of everything. And I bought 2 of every MOTM filter.
Amazing.
Almost every. Well, I bought 2 of the 440 and 2 of the 420, which is his MS-20 filter.
I mean, this one, the 440. This is based on the famous SSM 2040 that we'll find in particularly most famously maybe a load of sequential synths like the Prophet 5.
The Prophet 5 Rev 2 specifically. Yeah, it sounds so good, and I do own 2 of them. I think one of them I built from a kit, and then one of them Paul built. I bought pre-assembled from him. And I also have then one of his CS80 filters. All of his filters sound so good, and that stuff is like feels like you're using a piece of military equipment. It's so well made. I have some Eurorack. I have a fair amount of Eurorack. I have a lot of things that are very, very Euroracky, like very like.
What's the most Euroracky thing you've got?
Oh, the most Euroracky thing I've got is that what is it? The MASF noise generator. This Japanese module that's like a bunch of cross-modulated oscillators with one output and one knob, and it's just like harsh noise, the genre, in a module that actually sounds really good. And Bill and I both kind of hate it, but we use it all the time in clipping stuff because it's such a shortcut. It's such a shortcut. I mean, I use rings all the time too. That feels very Euroracky.
Oh yeah, rings is I think the most Eurorack module of all time.
It's so good.
So let's move
Yeah.
on to the next module,
Sure.
which is on my list here. The Modcan digital delay. This is we're going digital. We're moving away from the purist.
So yeah, if I have a thing I did right, it was buy a bunch of MOTM filters. If I had a thing I did wrong, it was not buy more Modcan stuff before he stopped doing it. I don't remember if I bought this digital delay new or used, but it felt like a weird choice for me at the time to get a digital module in 5U. But there weren't that many delay options. I think I had a Blasset Time Machine in 5U at the time, which is very analog and weird. It's a Bucket Brigade delay, and I have one in FRAC now, and I love it. But it's a very and I was like, I just wanted a clean, clockable delay. And there weren't really any options at the time. And now there's a million options, of course. So I got this, which is Modcan stuff was quite expensive. And it is a clean, clockable delay. It sounds great. But speaking of Car Plus Strong, it also goes really, really short. And it's stereo. It's mono in, stereo out. It's stereo, which is important to me to be able to do things in stereo. And it does this thing. It's not quite, you can't quite Car Plus Strong it, but you can get very pitched stuff out of it. But it does this thing when you get really, really short delays on it with very high feedback and you're modulating the delay time. It has this really chirpy, metallic kind of skronk to it that I've not heard. I've not used another delay that can do exactly that. Other things sort of get close, but I've never heard that exact sound come out of anything else. And I occasionally hear it on records, and I'm like, Modcan. It's so recognizable to me, and it's all over clipping tracks. It's all over my film scores. I probably overuse it, but it has become my most used module. And it's like, often it's my just main output path from the synth. If I've made a mono sound and I'm like, I could have a little width on that, I'll just throw it through the stereo delay, put it on the shortest setting, and just dial it in just a little bit to give it a little bit of width. So it's sort of, it's my stereo widener to a degree. I mentioned the clipping song Taken Off. So the kick drum and that is this voice that I made that we make all the time. And the snare is a recording of a snare drum that I made, but it's going through this the Modcan delay. And the way that it works is every time the snare hits, there's a sample and hold changing the delay time.
Okay.
With infinite feedback. So it kind of freezes at a different tempo every time. And then when the kick drum hits, it turns the feedback off, clears the delay. And then when the snare hits, it pings that.
Brilliant. I love that.
Yeah,
delay, man. It's just, we love it, don't we? It's so simple yet it's so mysterious, and it can make ghosts of sounds. It can process other sounds in these amazing ways.
If sound is about memory and nostalgia, delay is the shortcut to reminding us of that, right? And and everything is time, right? In sound, like there's no pitch. Pitch doesn't exist. It only exists in our brain. It's just a way that our brains have of parsing time, right? Because it's just about really, really short times. It's not the Alan Strange book. It's some other early electronic music book that I read once in the van on tour. And the very first chapter is when you're talking about time in music, you talk about long time, you're talking about symphonic form and album form and long, sort of hours long form. You're talking about shorter increments of time, then you're talking about song structure, you're talking about movements in a symphony, you're talking about minutes. When you're talking about seconds, then you're talking about rhythm, and you're talking about beat. And when you're talking smaller than that, you're talking about pitch, but it's all time. It's all just organizations of time. So a module, like a delay module with really, really short delay times and really high feedback like that. One of my tricks and shortcuts when I'm doing sound design work in theater or film, it feels like a hack, but it works, so I keep doing it. is that if we're in like a pitchless soundscape, like say it's a rainstorm on stage, and a character learns something, and we want to go inside their head, right? Like the shortcut to me to like get an audience to say like, oh, I'm now emotionally connected to what that character just learned, for example, is to introduce some element of pitch. And you can do that by just playing a piece of music, right? Like scoring. Or I like to find ways to take the diegetic sound that's happening, right? And pitch it somehow. Either like find a pitch in the air conditioner hum or something like that I can draw out to like enforce a musicality on the scene, or find a way to take a pitchless sound and make it pitched, either by like using bandpass filters or EQ notches or really short delays or something like. So anything like I love the Rings module because it has an input, right? It's not just a carpless strong synthesizer. You can run any sound you want through it.
Yeah. I love sending drums into it, whole drum patches, and then you just have this pitchedness ringing. It's delay. It seems on this series, it seems that everyone has some sort of love affair with delay, and it's so it's. I think you've really hit the nail on the head though. There, it's I think it really distills the relationship that we have with time, and also the way that it mimics the behavior of the real world of sound in the physical realm, but not accurately. This is what when I'm lecturing my students, I try and I'm explaining some of the mechanics behind delay and reverb, and I try and say the thing is that if I play you my voice with delay on it, you're gonna and ask you, what does this sound like sort of mimetically? And you'll say, maybe it sounds like you're in a canyon or you're in a tunnel or something like that. But if you, and it's true, in a cartoon, someone shouts down a well and it goes, hello, 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 hello.
Yeah.
But of course, it's not what happens in real life. It communicates something, but it's a sort of a hyper-real representation. It's a better representation of what would really happen to get that sense of space. And there's something amazing about that it's like, it communicates with a very deep part of us that associates, one thing, like you were talking just then about using that kind of pitched information to kind of as a shortcut technique to kind of get into someone's head. I sometimes think of delay as a shortcut technique to making a sound seem louder.
Oh, sure. Totally. Yeah. And the pitch, right? If you think of the pitch as basically being short delays, as being comb filtering, right? I mean, that's what feedback is too, right? And that's what, and it gives you a sense of space. It gives you like a particular sense of space. And I think, it's like you've moved into the infinitely, the infinitely like small reflector, like the smaller the reflections, right? the shorter the distance between the walls is, the shorter the resonant what's the word I'm looking for, the nodes, right? The smaller the nodes are, the smaller a space we're in, the more pitch we hear, so the more internal it feels, right? It's like I do think there, like for me, there is an association with just pitched material and being inside the mind, or something like the architecture of the brain, or something like that's the association I make.
Absolutely.
And it feels like too simple, to just to say that sort of one to one. And of course, there are a million different ways you can add pitch to something. But that to me is the thing I keep returning to. Right.
Well, let's talk about another way of adding pitch. You know what I'm going to say? The frequency shifter, another Modcan module. This is the 39B.
The Holy Grail.
Yes.
Man, this thing, again, this was I'm really glad I bought this when I did, because you can't get them anymore. It's an analog frequency shifter. It's related to like the Bode and the Moog frequency shifters. It was wildly expensive for me at the time. It's probably the most I've spent on a module, like probably $1,000 new or something like that. And now you just can't get them; it's just unobtainable. I
mean, hey man, this is 5U. It's your funeral.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, right? I know. The Modcan stuff, that is really like, if you could still get it and I lost all my gear and someone handed me a check and I had to start again, I would be very, very tempted, if it were possible, to just build an entirely Modcan system, because it sounds incredible. Yeah, this frequency shifter, it really just sounds like butter. It's really easy to get into like sci-fi sort of knob twiddly territory that feels really jammy and goofy. But if you're subtle, do get like it really just adds these lovely resonances and rings and sort of pitches to anything you throw into it. What I love it in conjunction with the digital delay, because the digital delay has a feedback loop. So does the frequency shifter. And I love throwing the frequency shifter in the feedback loop of the delay.
Nice.
And it's really hard to control when you do that. It just goes crazy really quickly and distorts and becomes really gnarly. But if you get it right on the cusp of getting too much, it's a very unique sounding delay. This frequency shifter is actually also my favorite thing to throw on like acid bass lines, like on a 303.
Oh yeah.
It's all over Dead Channel Sky on all the 303 sounds.
That sort of extra element of sort of resonance, harmonic resonance coming off.
Squelch. Yeah.
I feel like maybe the intrigue of a module like this on a really fundamental level is that it stays in that analog realm, yet it does things so complex to sounds that it feels like it's right on that line between like super complex and highly sort of analog, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. And just as a module, it's the most aesthetically beautiful thing I think I own. There's this one giant knob in the middle. It's really tactile and really fun to use. And it has both a positive and a negative output. So again, that's fun for panning or for processing differently. But it's just one of these weird little unicorns that it kind of isn't super versatile, right? It does like a very particular thing, but that thing is so unique. And so the only other frequency shifter I have is the Modcan dual frequency shifter in Eurorack.
Okay.
Which is a digital frequency shifter, which doesn't sound nearly as good. Like at the time he was still making them and they were kind of cheap, and I was like, I'll get this dual frequency Modcan frequency shifter. I will admit I barely use it because I have the real one, but I can't get rid of it because it feels like you could never get it again. So
worth it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the next module, the quad envelope 60B. This is again this is a bit of classic synthesis, isn't it? But sort of creative and utility at the same time, I dare say.
It is like a standard envelope, except sort of tweaked a bit, and it's certainly like it feels like a gateway Eurorack gateway module a bit, because it's digital. It's 4 envelopes that you cycle. That it's a little annoying to cycle between editing them with a button and have the knobs not line up. It's sort of classic, like classic like synth with knobs and presets where the knobs don't. The knobs don't take over.
You need one of the Melbourne Instruments.
Yeah. I just bought that MIDI controller and I haven't actually taken it out of the box yet. But
it's heaven, Jonathan.
I'm excited. They
can also make detents. They can like take on detents wherever you want in the knobs.
Oh, they can really? Oh my god, it's the future. Retrofit all these modules, right?
I know. Oh my gosh.
So it's an ADSR, but it's an AHDSR. an attack, hold, decay, sustain, release, which has become my favorite envelope type because the hold, sort of talking about this a little bit, the hold ends up acting like a compressor a little bit, right? Basically ends up squashing the peak and letting you control how like crushed the transient feels. And this to me is this sort of secret weapon of this kick drum sound, which makes it feel big and loud without any external processing.
So this is kind of the taking on the compression type thing. What you're feeding this into a VCA.
Yeah. So I'm using the three of the four envelopes here to make the one kick drum sound, right? Which is not super efficient. But it's a very classic 808 kick drum, with one envelope, being the pitch of the oscillator to do that sort of snap drop thing that in classic kick drum synthesis, one going to the filter, and then one going to the VCA, and they all use a small amount of the hold, but the VCA slightly more. And it making this sound, I've made it, I don't know, 100 times in the last 15 years, right? But every time it's cycling through those envelopes, dialing them all in, it just takes forever. Fortunately, you can save the parameters on this module once you get into a place you like. I kind of wish it auto-saved so that I didn't have to think about it when I powered the system off. It's another sort of digital module frustration of mine. Like I didn't get into modular to save presets, but but it sounds so good. If I had the space and he made, an individual age DSR that was just one of these and I had four of those, that would be better, right? I would prefer that, but I don't have the space for that, and this thing sounds incredible, so it's worth the kind of menu diving. The other things that it does all, you do have some CV control of it, of the shape of it, which is really nice, which I don't use that much, but I think it's the decay and the release time are CVable together, which is really useful for like clicky hi-hat sort of sounds. You can switch it between linear, logarithmic, and exponential curve shapes per envelope, and you can make it an LFO too. You can make it just repeat that shape. But for like real musical, hard hitting, like bass and drum sounds and things, I want an ADSR, and having the H is icing on the cake for me, and it makes this whole sound possible.
I'm keen to talk about your last module on the list, which this is the TLN 156 Neural Agoniser. This is a module by Tellun, and I was really struck by just doing my research for this interview. There was a lovely bit on the website that says if you're looking for a smooth, natural sounding reverb system to make your synthesizer sound like it's being played in the Concertgebouw, which I probably said wrong, but that's the concert building in Amsterdam, then go buy a lexicon. This is not your grandmother's reverb tank. This is a noxious tool capable of inflicting some serious damage to your audio. Firstly, I just love that they assume that my grandmother has a reverb tank. But it's this, and if she did, this wouldn't be hers. I feel like, this just feels very you, but then of course all these modules do. Tell me about this one.
It was one of the first. It was like once I built up my confidence building a few smaller MOTM kits, this was the first kit probably that I built where I had to source all my own parts too, like from a bill of, a Mouser bill of materials, and I built it and it worked, and I calibrated it and it still works. We just moved, and I've just been in the process of resetting up my studio, and I remembered that you have to put the spring reverb tanks as far away as you can from any power supplies because they just buzz. And So I had to do some refinagling to get them to not, and they still have a little bit of ground hum in them. I gotta work on that if I want to use this thing more. But it's 2 tanks. You can feedback between them. They all have a bunch of filters and a bunch of distortions built into it. It also has a feedback loop. So a thing I'd never done before was I cross-patched the feedback loops between the frequency shifter and the neural agonizer for this patch, which sounds crazy, and I'm gonna do that forever now. It's a wild, unpredictable module, and it's like it's on the sort of bleeding edge of where I start to lose patience with I like the 5U stuff in part, and I always say this, right, is because the knobs are labeled the things that they do, which I like.
Trauma,
maybe
stress, deform.
Yeah,
I've got the module
so
up in front of me.
Yeah, so this one is not that, right? It's labeled with nonsense words. But I have such a fondness for it. It took me so long to build, and it was such a labor of love. And it was, I no longer have it in this panel because I bought a panel from Bride Chamber and I repaneled it. But the first panel that I had it in, I think I had just had it in a piece of cardboard for a while because there was you couldn't get a panel for it. And then I bought, a bunch of pieces of aluminum and a drill press, and I made screens, and I silk screened my own panels.
Wow.
And they were hideous. And then Bride Chamber showed up, and you could get panels again, which was great. But yeah, I'd be hard pressed to point to an example of the neural agonizer on a clipping track. It's so esoteric and a little bit like noisy in an unpredictable way that actually like isn't the sort of thing that we reach for in clipping that much. But I love it, and I love that it represents a really important step in my journey into modular. I'm always really happy when I make a sound in the modular that doesn't sound synthy at all, right?
Well, what a great module to end on. Jonathan Snipes, thanks so much for being here.
Oh man, thank you so much. Absolute pleasure.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out the show notes page for this episode, where you'll find further information along with web links and details of all our other episodes. And just before you go, let me point you to the soundonsound.com/podcasts webpage, where you can explore what's playing on our other channels as well. My name is William J. Stokes, and this has been a production for Sound on Sound magazine.